Hello, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this year's Fusion event. My name is Philipp Hamann. I'm a business development manager here at Therefore, and I'm responsible for Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and the Netherlands. Needless to say that we would love to see you, of course, face to face again, but we have chosen this year a digital event simply to reach out to a bigger audience. Mark, can you please tell us if we reached that goal?
Yeah, thanks, Philip. Yeah, so my name's Mark Eost. I'm also a business development manager and I look after the UK and Ireland. And I'm pleased to say that this year's registrations, we've got nearly 1,500 global participants from 90 different countries. I hope that it gives everybody a lot of confidence. Over to you, Charlene.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for all joining. So I'm the third one of the three musketeers in Europe, the third BDM for France, Belgium, and Luxembourg. And I'm really looking forward to this Fusion event in the digital way to learn more about the new features, the panel discussions, and all the insightful information we'll get today.
All right, great. Thank you to our three musketeers, as you say, Charlene, to our wonderful team responsible for Europe and the EMEA region. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Kono. I'm part of Therefore's digital engagement team, and I'll be walking you through the rest of today's introduction, and we'll start off by looking at the agenda. So I will say all the times that we're talking about are CET. So if you're in the UK or Ireland, track 1, or add as needed. So just about now at 10 a.m. CET, we have our introduction. There's a few things our team wants to talk to you about. At approximately 10:15, we have our panel discussion for today, which is called All the Data, All the Time, which is a conversation on information governance, technology, and how to manage large volumes of data, essentially. After that, we're going to hop over to our Therefore product demo with our technical team. We're going to be looking at the latest features in Therefore that are available this year, and some features that will be available very soon to you, including some highly requested features that a lot of people are looking forward to. We're then going to move on to our customer success stories, and we have 3 of those lined up for you today. So that's a very exciting part of our event that will be in the second half of it. And after we hear our customer stories, we're going to take a look at some final questions that we have, and finally we'll do our closing. So altogether, we should be here for about 90 minutes, possibly 10 more minutes if we get a lot of good questions. So please feel free to ask questions, especially during the product demo. That's what our team is here for. And as part of our introduction, what we'd like to do is go over a general introduction to Therefore. So I can see that although many of you have already are already Therefore veterans, as I like to say, we know there are quite a few people on the call who maybe don't know Therefore so well, who haven't been working with the system as long. And so for this reason, we would like to just go over a general introduction to Therefore. So I'm happy to share this with you. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to share my screen again. All right, so I'm just going to give you a general introduction to Therefore before we move on to our next part. So for those of you who may not be familiar with Therefore, maybe you've heard the name, but you're not quite sure what it does. Well, Therefore, in short, is a software that allows you to maximize the usefulness of your information. That is your documents, your forms, your photos, whatever type of information your organization may have. You may hear Therefore referred to as an information management platform, which is correct in essence, but in reality, it goes quite a bit beyond that. Therefore is a worldwide known real-time business platform that at its core covers 3 main areas. First comes managing information as an asset. Second is running and optimizing business processes. And finally, gathering business analytics. But what exactly do these 3 points mean? If we start with managing information as an asset, with Therefore, your files are no longer sitting in a cabinet or on a local drive taking up space or not being used. Therefore stores your information securely in a centralized location so you can start using the information and documents in your system that you have to help you drive your business forward. And when information is managed as an asset, it allows you to have full line of sight of your documents and information. This allows you to optimize your business processes, including utilizing things like e-forms and robust workflows that we mentioned, so that you can work smarter and not harder. Whenever you need to make improvements, you can start doing so with Therefore, and this in turn leads to the next logical step, which is the gathering business analytics. This is where the visibility comes into play. So with Therefore, you can create formal reports or use Therefore dashboards to gain an insight into what's working, or maybe more importantly, what is not working within your organization. And from here, you can address areas of concern and make quick business decisions to continue moving forward. Staying in the know and being able to measure success is a key way to ensure that your business can thrive and grow. It's also important to know that Therefore is used across the world by thousands of customers, covering a huge range of industries. Not only that, but Therefore is used in businesses of all sizes as well, from one-person operations all the way up to globe spanning enterprises with thousands of users within the system. There really are also no limits to where Therefore can be used. This is a global product that is available wherever Canon products are sold, which is, well, pretty much everywhere. We also have servers and Therefore staff strategically placed around the globe, so truly there are no limits to where Therefore can be utilized. And not only is Therefore used all over the world, but we have multiple options for integrating Therefore into your infrastructure. We offer Therefore as a traditional on-premise server-based solution, of course, but our cloud solution, Therefore Online, is a major component of our development focus. Therefore Online, again, our cloud solution provides all the same features of your installed Therefore in a robust and reliable cloud platform. It gives our customers peace of mind and the cost effectiveness, of course, that comes with having cloud solutions. Of course, Therefore Online is available throughout the world as well. We have data centers in all the major regions, and we can provide local service to suit our customers' needs. So I wanted to take a quick look at the details of some of the functionalities in Therefore for those of you who may not be familiar with it. As I mentioned before, we do have customers of all sizes, and that's because Therefore scales to provide the right functionality for all types of companies, whether these be SMBs, small, medium businesses, or larger enterprises as well. When we talk about Therefore, we usually introduce it with these 6 points that cover the broad spectrum. This isn't everything, of course, but we try to break it down into these easily digestible points. Starting with capture, this is being able to capture and utilize paper and electronic information. Once it's in the system, Therefore controls the access to it, our next step. You can access your data anytime, anywhere pretty much from the central location. And while it is in the central repository, it is very secure. Therefore does have very flexible and broad permissions and security options to make sure that, of course, only authorized people are allowed to view the information within the system. The next step, automation. This is really a huge part of what Therefore does, automating and optimizing core business processes. With a drag and drop workflow designer, essentially, this means that if you can picture a process, you can build it within Therefore. The next step that we talk about, managing information as a strategic asset, is sort of the overarching goal of what Therefore does. And sometimes we get asked, why don't you use the conventional term of document management when you talk about Therefore? And that's a really good question. The reason for it is because within Therefore, you're not just storing documents. That may be the majority of what you're storing, but it's not just documents, because your documents have other data around them. They have metadata. The workflow processes with which you're processing your documents also create more data. They create data about how the workflow ran and other statistics or key performance indicators. And that's why we talk about Therefore as managing strategic information. It's because it's more than just the physical data and files that you're putting into the system. It's everything that gets created around the processing of these documents as well. And that's why the final step is the analysis, being able to analyze and react to key performance indicators. Therefore does have powerful tools for reporting to make sure that you have an overview of the information in your system and what's being done with it. And this is so you can leverage it in order to gain business intelligence to help your organization run. So in the end, what do you get with Therefore? Of course, there are a wealth of advantages to be gained, but we can boil it down to the 5 major points you see on your screen. Productivity, recouping the time you lose searching for information or in chaotic processes. Reactivity, visibility, maintaining a clear overview of your processes, security, about keeping your information safe, and finally, the flexibility. And this is really about being able to access information anytime, anywhere. This was a short introduction to Therefore. At this point, I would like to move on to the next part of today's session. For this, I would like to invite Michael Lebeda to the stage for a few words on our goals and strategy. So, Michael, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kauno. Let's talk about how we shape what's next. Our strategy is to be the platform for real-time business. In reality, this means the platform for your business. We understand you have a business to run, and we want to give you a reliable and scalable technology to grow and give you the peace of mind to help you focus on your core operations. Now, we all have heard that the economic forecast for 2023 will be challenging, and we are reading in the newspaper about a slowdown in the global economy and inflationary pressure. However, we also know that with every challenge, there is opportunity. This is why we at Therefore are optimistic and focus on giving you adaptability and visibility through our platform. The two factors we want to get right for you are time and money. With time, the efficiency you gain with Therefore is as close as you can get to buying time. We know you're all passionate about optimizing the way your business runs, and we want to give you the tool to achieve your goals. With money, we are focused on delivering measurable results to your business with clear and predictable cost of ownership. And how does Therefore deliver? For businesses, we deliver the results they need. For people, we deliver trust and dependability. Creating a global product is all about listening to our customers and partners. Thank you for the trust you place in Therefore by running your mission-critical operations with us. Today, our team is proud not only to present the Therefore product and technology, but also concepts, ideas, and customer stories to contribute to your success in 2023. Enjoy the event.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Michael. One of the things that you mentioned was the need for a reliable and scalable technology platform. Personally, I believe this is more relevant than ever due to the ever-increasing amount of data that businesses of every size, from the biggest global enterprises, really even down to small local businesses, are handling nowadays. It's just an exponential growth, month to month. And not only handling the data, but also making use of that data is the key to optimizing the way your business runs. To expand a little bit more on this topic and talk more about maybe some of the governance rules around data, I'd like to call Charlene back to the stage to help us get started with today's group discussion. So, Charlene, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Kono. Yes, as Kono was saying, the title of this panel is All the Data, All the Time. Gartner mentioned the shift from centralized to distributed working requires organization to make data and data management capabilities available more rapidly and in more places than ever before. So we will be discussing on this panel different aspects of governance of this data. And for this, let me introduce my partners of this panel discussion. Gary Organ from Canon UK and Ireland. So here you go. So
good morning.
Thank you. Hi, Gary. Gary is Indirect Sales Manager for Software and Document Information Management, and you will share your experience on the field, meeting customers on a daily basis. And Mark Eost, business developer at Therefore, and Mark has a strong technical background and extensive knowledge of the market and ran his own company. So his multifaceted profile will bring a very interesting insight in the discussion.
Thanks, Charlotte.
Thank you both for joining. According to Forrester, an very well-known worldwide analyst, up to 73% of company data goes unused for analytics and decision-making. It's a metric that is costing businesses their success. What that says is that some companies are using their data in a valuable way, but a lot of business struggle to manage and leverage this data. Gary, do you think this is valid for all businesses?
Yes, good morning, everybody. Firstly, Charlene, I do. I think there's a great concern in the market that data needs to be addressed. I'm in a very fortuitous position looking at software from two angles, one from a data collation and capture point of view from the scanning technology, and also from a software perspective. And what I see is that the digitization process is real right now, and that there is growing concern, certainly from smaller businesses. I think the concern has been there for quite a while with corporate organizations, and they seem to be the organizations that have acted fairly quickly, but that's now filtering down to your sort of SMB, low-end corporates, where there's real concern growing, and businesses feel there is a need that they need to address right now.
Have you witnessed actions taken by companies to address this flow of data?
Yeah, so there's been various actions that are in flight, I guess, and our partner community in the UK is a great example of that. We're consistently having conversations through their customers around the need to implement solutions that enable them to be able to manage that. There's obviously an increase in people utilising what the users believe is free software, things like SharePoint, Microsoft Teams as data management systems. And the truth of that is that begins to grow exponentially, and people have no understanding of the sort of issue that they're creating, and they're basically moving the problem further down the line. And the people that are acting quickly on that and having those conversations with their customers are able to explain how to address that issue right now.
Okay. So is there different roles or focus specific within companies? You can see that there are different missions, or is it, if you say it's a growing concern?
Yeah, so what, again, I'm sure the audience has seen this, but the landscape of the roles has changed dramatically over the last 5 to 10 years. And you see more chief information officers now, you see more people managing data at an operational level. So departments, even in our organization, departments have allocated people to manage data and look at things such as GDPR regulations and what data we can use and what we can share and what we can store. And I think that's beginning, as I say, to filter down even further to the point where people are beginning to capture more information from different sources. The requirement to capture information from paper-based documents into digital records is increasing at a rate that we've not seen previously. So yeah, absolutely, there is, and that links to the concern that you've already mentioned.
Thank you. So when talking about data governance, one of the most famous and toughest regulation, especially in Europe, is GDPR, and that comes straight to our mind. In Europe, since the launch in 2018, over 900 fines have been issued of multi-hundred million euros, GAFAs, but also banks, telecommunication companies, all sorts of domain of activities. As you were saying, Gary, it's trickled down from Amazon, Google, WhatsApp, all the way down to a lot smaller companies. Mark, can you see a change in the markets linked to that increasing need to better govern the data, especially personal data?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, picking up on what Gary was saying there, the first thing is obviously with the exit from the European community, the UK is in a bit of a transitional position at the moment with the way that we're managing or trying to manage sensitive data in this area where GDPR doesn't really apply to us, but it does at a certain level. And in the future, there will be new legislation in the UK. But what I see a lot in, especially the SMEs, but actually it is very visible in corporates, is that they are still heavily dependent on paper files, files stored in network folders, files stored in SharePoint. And if you have that content spread, then you cannot properly govern that data and ensure that you have everything accessible. So if you were at the end of a PII claim, as an example, you need to be able to quickly gather that information together. And that's an almost impossible task unless you've got something in the background to manage that data and those documents for you. But we are very much seeing a change in job roles. So they're now data governance and compliance officers. And if you look on LinkedIn and other social, business social media sites, you'll see a proliferation of that sort of role now.
Which is good for us. It's better profile of people to talk to
Absolutely
better understand our job and what we're trying to achieve within companies to increase traceability and security of the data. So I guess it's a more focused type of target profile to speak to and have a proper constructive discussion. So thanks, Mark. A big aspect of data governance, as we have seen, is security. And recently, another very current topic has been the increasing number of ransomware worldwide. And the healthcare industry, for example, has been hardly hit. It's also one of the sector which is meant to grow the most in the next few years, according to financial analysts. So how do you think, both of you, how do you think this industry and others will cope with the need to grow fast, change also at the same time the way they're working because of the hybrid working and also, clearly changing the way we work, and simultaneously ensuring very strong data governance. So Gary, what do you feel? Do you feel, for example, to use this healthcare as an example, do you feel the healthcare industry is ready for this wave to come, or any other industry?
So if we use the live example you've used there of healthcare is a fast-moving and ever-changing landscape, certainly in the UK, where their lives pass by and shifts are changing, and that presents a lot of challenges for the users at a data level. On a more sort of macro scale in the sector, they understand the issue that they have. Whether they're actually able to address that on a full scale is questionable at this stage, but I think they need to pick off bite-sized chunks. If you look at some of the data that's been shared through Sophos, they've suggested that there's been a 94% increase in ransomware attacks on the healthcare sector in the last year. So from 2021 to 2022, which is huge. And if you look at the examples that have happened, there's been a ransomware attack, which was a major scale ransomware attack that impacted over 100 people being allocated beds for critical illness here in the UK as well. So some of those things are materially impacting the service that healthcare delivers.
Yeah, so we can really see that the security of data, especially personal data, very sensitive data, is more and more important, especially with not very nice people using these flaws within those companies or organizations. So maybe, Mark, is there changes in the way security of data is managed within companies? Have you seen anything happening?
Yeah, I think, as a result of COVID, obviously it's really put pressure on to accelerate the transformation process. And what we're seeing very commonly now is that when we respond to tenders and RFIs, that there's an increasing amount of questions related to the security. People are looking for clarification that their data is secure at rest and in transit. And then when it comes down to those transactional records, they want to ensure that things like electronic signatures are fully certificated and authenticated by the provider. So, there is a sea change in the way that we're managing our information, which I think has been, a long time coming. And it's very important now that that's coming through in these sort of questions that we're being asked and challenged on quite correctly, because, if we're moving away from the legacy paper files that notionally were secure, and I suppose in one respect they were, because if you had it locked in a filing cabinet, whilst somebody could go and access that filing cabinet and it was at risk for other reasons, it wasn't at risk on the internet of somebody going and grabbing that data. Whereas now we have completely the opposite challenge, where we can remove the paper and make it accessible to the audience that needs access to it. But of course, we need to make sure that we address the security requirements.
Exactly. And it's interesting to have your feedback also on the cloud aspect, with especially, for example, in healthcare. There is the HDS, norm and compliancy for the storage of data. And from the experience on the field also, I can see that some of my customers have been experiencing, unfortunately, ransomware, quite a lot of them actually. And a lot of them are now migrating their data on the cloud because they feel that, even very big companies, that their data on-premise is a lot less secure because they've experienced the hacking on their on-premise installations rather than on cloud installations, obviously with the right contracts modalities, not just a very easy Dropbox sort of storage, but we can really see that also moving to the cloud is something which companies are looking into to better secure their data. For example, healthcare, framed by the HDS compliancy, is also an option. So anything you want to add on this?
Yeah, I think, from a security point of view, if you rolled back time a year or two and spoke to an IT manager, generally they would have been comfortable with having their own servers and their own security policies. And now I think there is a wider appreciation for the fact that it's incredibly difficult for a standalone organisation, whether it's a corporate or an SME, to actually keep pace with the ever-changing security requirements that are changing minute by minute. So having it in the cloud with teams of people working on security is a lot more beneficial to those organisations.
Gary, do you want to add?
I totally agree with that. What I would say is, obviously, the black market for security is 6 times the size of the security market itself. So organisations that aren't focused on it are going to really struggle to keep up. The attacks that take place are done on volume, not on isolated instances. So it's something that larger organisations, in terms of breadth, will really have to ensure that every aspect of their systems are secured. And the cloud technology eliminates that because it allows hybrid working into a system that is secure as well. And we're now in a position where we're probably seeing as much as 70 to 80% of our implementations for most of our software being in the cloud. So that's I think that really shows that the market's driving that trend as well.
Yeah, and obviously, little hint to therefore, but obviously, therefore, online, being on Azure, HDS, adding security with a very fine granularity is definitely answering those needs in companies. So.
I would suggest that, therefore, is probably one of the more prominent going to cloud of all other technologies right now as well.
Yeah, and that also supports the rapid change in the landscape of needing to move your business process and the deployment of the applications. A year or two ago, if you were stuck with deploying on your own servers, you were waiting for the resources to be available in the IT department when they might have lots of other projects on the go. Whereas now it takes hours to provision a cloud infrastructure, and then there's plenty of people there with the technical expertise to configure the software to do what actually the business needs to do.
Great. Last aspect of this panel discussion, we were talking a lot about security, but security is also linked to the notion of authenticity. And with this huge amount of data within companies coming from all sorts of sources, organized in very different ways, there is a challenge to define the source of truth. So where is the correct data? Mark, how can companies organize themselves to facilitate defining the source of truth?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges a lot of organizations have faced is, especially where things like mergers and acquisitions occur, is that inherit data that wasn't in their native systems. And then trying to manage that becomes an increasing problem because the employees don't know necessarily where to go and look at the outset. So, the start point is, where is this information? So they end up with lots of different silos. So they might end up with documents and contracts on a network in a shared folder. They might have collaboration documents in a SharePoint document library. And increasingly, we're seeing a very concerning trend of people sharing documents through Microsoft Teams and other kind of communications platforms without realizing the implications of what they're doing. And then you have these third-party applications that support specific business process, and sometimes they create or manage files in a certain way, normally quite basic. Now, from a user perspective, you want to provide them with a single source of the truth, and therefore very much does that by having a centralized repository that allows you to bring all of that content together. However, there is a trend towards low-code, no-code integration into clients' existing applications. So, if they're using, as an example, a SharePoint site for managing projects and they want to communicate about the project through there, we want to be able to integrate with SharePoint so that the documents can exist in Therefore, but be available through the SharePoint infrastructure. So we're very much focusing all of our efforts on providing a great user experience while making sure that we retain the high levels of compliance, audit and security that come out of the box with Therefore to give you great information governance.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks a lot. Well, I'm sure Stefan will tell us more later on how Therefore roadmap is aligned to that. So let's not spoil the surprise, but thank you very much to both of you. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Mark, for this panel discussion, for your great input.
No problem.
And I will hand over to Kono to share his conclusion on this panel. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Charlene, Gary, Mark. Really insightful. I'm not going to lie to you, a bit scary too. some of the things that you talked about. But I do want to mention one thing. One of our attendees actually said that there was a customer in the UK who suffered a ransomware attack, and their solution to that was to move to Therefore Online. So we're really glad to see, of course, that the customer was able to find an efficient solution to protect themselves. Yeah, it's a bit of a scary world out there, and as Gary also mentioned, it's now not just big companies that have to worry about data security. It's every company, even a single man trader kind of thing. If you have customer data, it affects you. So it really is a topic that is relevant to everyone. So thanks again, guys, for your insights on that. We do want to stay with the technology topic now. And for this, I would like to start the next session, which is actually the Therefore product demo. So now is really the good stuff about Therefore, which we're all very excited about. And for this, I would like to ask my colleagues Stefan and Wolfgang to join us. So gentlemen, please get us started.
Yeah, hello everybody, and welcome to our product session here as part of the Fusion event. Wolfgang and myself, we would like to give you an overview about the new things which are coming with the Therefore product in the year 2022. So this really is focused on two releases. It's the Therefore 2022 release, which we had in spring, and it's also the Therefore Online upgrade version 28, which is happening right now. So Europe, the European Therefore Online system will be updated next week. We already had two other upgrades this week. So this is really happening now. And well, while Wolfgang is going to show you everything in a demo so that you see it in live action, I will start this session with giving you a presentation on the top highlights for these two versions. So what you will see here are three main areas of enhancements. One is a completely new Therefore integration for Microsoft Teams. Then I will give you some information about Dynamic Web View and end this presentation with Smart Capture. The Therefore integration for Microsoft Teams. So this is now new in the current release with the Therefore Online version 28. And in this first release of an integration for Teams, we focused on one specific use case when integrating Therefore with Teams, and this is the workflow tasks processing. You see the screenshot that's animated and giving you already a bit of an insight how this will look like. Directly in Teams, you can see a Therefore chat, so to say, where the Therefore system can chat with you, and it can send you information like, hey, there is a new instance waiting for you where you should take action. It's giving you options like viewing document, approve, reject, so that you can take immediate action directly here in the Teams user interface. So this is brand new functionality, and you will see it, of course, in the demo. Also, the demo is, of course, heavily based on the Dynamic Web View, which comes with increased stability and performance, but also both releases had several new features added to the Dynamic Web View. Just to give you an example, the upper ones are here with the current release, like executing saved searches, or that hit list layout changes are stored for the user. Also, e-forms can be accessed, download printing documents. Earlier in the year, we had the document history, linked objects, and stuff like this. What I would like to go a bit more into detail is around the Dynamic Web View, because this also has the dashboard feature, which is not available in the other Therefore clients. And dashboards give users a nice option to have a start screen where they can see information which is absolutely relevant for them, like some statistics on new documents, on workflow instances where they are in the process. It can also give you a workflow inbox where you can directly start to work on what is pending for you. You also can have a drop zone so to save new documents. So you can really configure this dashboard according to your personal needs. And what was new in the spring release was that these dashboards can be shared among users. So this is of course great, because then a power user who is much more into Therefore and is comfortable with setting up such a dashboard can configure everything and then share the dashboard with other users in the team who feel less comfortable with that and just want to have a very quick start, so they can then use the dashboard designed for them. Well, and then some more new topics around Smart Capture. With the current release, the most important enhancement is that you can have multiple queues per tenant. This helps especially when you have different types of documents which you want to process. For example, you want to process your invoices, but you also want to have purchase orders, you also have delivery notes, things like that. Then you can now define separate queues, processing queues for all these different document types, and configure the queues according to the needs. So you can specialize them and make sure that they are working exactly as expected and customized for the document types. In between the releases in summer, we also changed licensing a bit. So it's just a positive statement for all our customers that whatever pages they buy as credits for Smart Capture, they never expire. So if the volume is lower than expected, you don't lose the money. You can still use your credits. Other improvements in the previous release in spring were, for example, to skip the manual verification, because the standard process would be uploading the documents, then Smart Capture automatically extracts the information from the invoice, all the index data. Then as a third step, there would be this manual verification that the user can verify whether everything was recognized correctly and can correct things. And then the standard workflow process would continue. With this automation feature, it's now possible to skip the manual verification, and it's only skipped if the confidence level of the automatic recognition reaches a certain configurable level. So this gives you the option to automate the process in case the recognition was really reliable. Okay, also data matching was new here. So if you have all your suppliers already in the reference table, and therefore you can upload this information to Smart Capture, again to help with the data extraction and improve accuracy of the data. Yeah, this was a quick overview about the new stuff in Therefore in this year, and I hand over to Wolfgang to show these features in action now.
Yeah, let me just share my screen. So yeah, welcome everyone to the demo of the new features. I'm basically going to run through two different scenarios with you here. The first scenario is more around HR, which is basically focusing on the recruitment process. So we're going to see a recruiting form like where people can apply for a job in the company, which will then trigger a workflow process to approve or reject an application. And by this, we can see the different parts of the software working together. And the second part of the demo is more focused around accounts payable and for sure around Smart Capture and the changes that have been applied to Smart Capture. But let's start this off with the application. So I'm going to start off an anonymous e-form now. So that's an e-form that's available without authentication. It can easily be incorporated or added to any company website. It can be running in an iframe. So that can be very integrated into your own homepage, into your own internet sites. So let's just run through it and let's just file an application. So let's just add one for Julia here. So she's coming from the UK. She's applying for a QA engineer. She found us on LinkedIn. And let's just take her CV. And by uploading it to Therefore, this now automatically starts a workflow process in the back, which is making sure that the document is forwarded to the correct person to check the CV and to decide if the person fits to the company. I'm now here connected with Microsoft Teams in the background, Teams app, which is new. And you see that we now got a notification about the job application that we just received. So this was sent to Carlos, who is one member of the HR team, and he's getting it into his teams. What's on this card, basically? So we have the process, job applications QA, so that we know this is running and working across all different types of workflow processes. So it's for sure very important to know, what it's about. We got the current process step. So this is about reviewing the current CV that we just received. We get some metadata about the document that is saved. So we got the first name, last name, country of residence, and the phone number. We got the instructions for the task. So what is supposed to happen so that the user know what his task basically is. We have the option to view the document or to specify additional information. And we have our actions at the bottom. So this is the decisions that the user needs to take on processing this item. If we now click on the View Document link, this directly gets us into a dynamic web view and shows us the document which is saved. That's the application. We can also check the CV and read it for sure thoroughly and take a decision. Just need to close this tab again. And yeah, if we go back to Teams and say, yeah, that's a good candidate, we can still add some instructions for the next person to process the task and schedule an interview. That is basically finishing the current step of the process. We get some, confirmation in Teams that this was not done properly. and what the decision was that was taken in the end for this one workflow task. There's one other scenario I want to quickly show you, which is also very important. So for this, I'm going to file a second application here. So I'm opening up the form once again and filing another application for John. Entering the correct data. He is an Angular developer. Also on LinkedIn, we just upload his CV. And submit it to the workflow. Now the same happens again, once more. So we get the notification in Teams. It takes 1 or 2 seconds. But what I actually wanted to show you is that if you got a team of people working on the same workflow process, like in this case, we have an HR department of 2, it's always very important that the applications keep in sync. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to switch to the dynamic web view now and log in as Kathy, which is the other member of the HR department. And if she's going not to use Teams, but she just wants to use the therefore dynamic web view and goes into her workflow inbox and opens the just received application for John. She can for sure also take the instance and process it. In this case, she's going to rejecting it because she doesn't fit to the job. What's important to notice is that as soon as this is done in the dynamic web view, also team updates and the card is removed for the user, which means there's no danger of somebody trying to process or work on an old or outdated workflow task. And the user gets the information that the task has been unassigned. Somebody else was obviously taking and processing it. And so by these teams and therefore always stay in sync. And, both sides are updated when something happens on the other side. For sure, this Teams application, this TeamSpot works on all of the supported Teams platforms. So that's perfectly all right to use it on the desktop app, in the web client of Teams. But at the same way, it works on the mobile phone, on iOS, Android. So wherever you have Teams, you can use this integration, this TeamSpot. Even when the task is finished or when it was unassigned from you, you still get back the view document link to check what happened. So we can still click it and get back to the dynamic web view and see the current state of the document. And by that, we can even find out who was processing it and what happened to it. But that brings us to another area of therefore which I wanted to show quickly. Although it's already existing for a while, I still want to show once more the dashboard here, which I in this case prepared as a power user, as Stefan was mentioning it. So the power user was preparing it and did share it with the whole HR department. So that's a shared dashboard. And it was preparing the different views onto different application paths. So we have like a different view for developer applications and QA applications. And you have a quite neat overview on this one screen, what's happening, where are the current tasks. So we have, for example, like 5 people, 5 developers currently waiting for an interview. We got some more CVs to review, and the same for QA applications where we see like the interviews and the CVs that are in and need actions. I don't want to go too deep into sharing dashboards because this was a feature released already in spring. But basically, if you go here into this settings area, you have this globe icon here that brings you to the sharing functionality for a dashboard. And so you can share it then with other people. What I would like to focus more on is a brand new feature of the dynamic web view. So if I go into my job applications area, at the bottom you can see now that there's a quick search part, which was not been available so far. This quick search part mainly provides 2 default searches of views to the user, and it also provides access to all the saved searches which are available to the system already. The first 2, like newest and modified by me, are standard searches, which are for each category available out of the box, while Open Dev applications and Open QA applications are some searches we have created first and saved so that the dynamic web can make use of it. To run it, you basically just need to click it. The newest brings you to a list of all your documents ordered sorted by creation date, pretty much. But if you now say, okay, well, but I didn't want to actually see all of those, I just want to focus on the QA roles, you can easily go here and just type QA and it will filter the result immediately for QA engineers only. And even you can add additional arguments like, sorry, this was a mistype. And so you can fine tune your search on the go pretty much. So that's quite neat because the quick views bring you very fast to your information, but still you have the option to further drill down whenever it's open. The default searches use standard layouts of the category, but for sure if you have a predefined query with predefined sorting or grouping or ordering of columns, you can open it up easily like this open dev applications search. And here you can see we have it like grouped by application status. On top, we have the ordering of the columns and the sizing of the columns optimized first for the screen. And by that actually, and we have already defined the search criteria for developer here on the role. And so that's the view that we then get if you have this predefined search already prepared for the user to use. So actually this is making the access to the data, the access to documents and your information much faster and easier than before. For sure, you still have all the options with the advanced search. If you have a special search that you want to like specify up front, you can always go here and have your optimized index data search. But with the quick searches, I think you have a quite neat and easy way now to quickly access some data. One thing I also want to mention quickly is the simple search on top here, because I have the feeling, or I noticed from people talking to people, this is misunderstood and in some moments in time. What this does basically is it issues an immediate full text search across all the index data that we have in the category. So this is especially useful if you just want to have a very quick lookup for some name or a customer name, because then you get your results very quickly. So if I go here and just type Bell and make search, I immediately get down to Julia Bell. I didn't have to specify I'm looking for the last name. I didn't have to specify any other specifics of the metadata. Just type in what I'm searching for and it brings me to what it finds on the system in a full text search manner. So this was the first part of the demo about the HR process. So in the next demo, I would more focus on AP processing and also especially the changes that we did to Smart Capture. So for this, I'm going to open up the Solution Center quickly. Important to notice is here for sure that you now have in the Smart Capture area can have multiple queues defined for different types of documents. So in this case, we have delivery notes and invoices. What are the difference, for example, in this demo for these two different types? So first of all, for sure, for invoices, we have much more data that we want to extract and read. So we have like invoice type, invoice number, and issue date. We have tax information. Typically stuff which is not on a delivery note, but we know it's on an invoice. So we can be very fine-grained now on what data should be read out of document. Automation is not configured here, but we have set up data matching too, which means that we're uploading our vendor database to Smart Capture. So that means that we can enhance the recognition quality a lot because Smart Capture can match the data read from the invoice with the data we have uploaded. And by that, be sure to have a better recognition quality on the vendor, for example, in this case. In contrary, on delivery notes, the setup is quite different. First of all, it's much less data we read because delivery notes only contain a subset of data that an invoice has. And here we also decided to enable the automation, which basically means whenever the delivery node is recognized in a confidence of 80%, so the system is 80% sure it did read everything perfectly right, then there's not even a manual verification required. It's basically just used and just forwarded and put into the final category. So in this case, there's no manual intervention required. So how does it look in action now? So let's go back to therefore. I need to log in as Kathy here. And I'm starting this off again by saving documents. So I will now just drag and drop my delivery notes and my invoice to the system. So I'm going to start with the invoice. Basically just save it by drag and drop. No index data needs to be specified. This is all going to be extracted by the Smart Capture service. And next, the delivery note. the delivery note and the invoices belong together, so they match. So in the end, we should see them linked up in Therefore and accessible vice versa. This is now saved to Therefore, running a workflow, uploading it to the Smart Capture service and doing the recognition. So let's check the workflow inbox, and here we are already. So now for the invoice, we can make the user review. So I'm going to open this up now in Smart Capture. So I'm getting to the Smart Capture screen here. I can check the data read, like the invoice number, the date. I see the vendor name is populated correctly from the external data source. So that's coming and matched against the uploaded data already. The amounts are properly read. We have the correct currency. So the invoice looks fine and we can confirm, which is pretty much ending the Smart Capture part of the process. And if I now go back to the incoming invoices and check for newest, I see the new invoice is in here. And if I open it up and we check for the linked objects, we immediately see that the delivery note is already attached to it. So that means basically in the background, while we were checking the invoice, the delivery note was fully read already, and it met the threshold, so there was no manual verification required. And so it was already saved to the system with the final metadata and also linked to the invoice, so you can easily access it from here. If I click it, I can open it up and also check the metadata read from the service, and in this case, even with line items there. And so, yeah, this is where like this accounts payable process pretty much ends. So the invoice is saved with proper index data, metadata, and you have also the delivery note attached and saved to Therefore through Smart Capture. Yeah, thanks for being part of the demo. Thanks for watching. And I think I'm gonna hand over now to Kono again for some questions and answers, I guess.
Yeah, thanks, Wolfgang. So we did, as usual, get quite a lot of questions. We are a little bit behind schedule, so in the interest of fairness, I'm going to address the questions in the order received. So our apologies if we don't get to your question, but we're only going to take a handful of them because we do have the rest of our session today within the time slot. So I'm just going to start. I did answer a few of them by text, so please take a look at the ones that were answered by text. But there are a few that I'm going to need my colleagues' insight on. Okay, so this next question is a little bit longer, so I'm going to pace it out. So within a workflow, in a email sending task, do you plan to add the possibility of overriding the SMTP parameters that are configured at the server level, for example, to insert a different sender? That's the first part of the question. So we'll start with that, Stefan.
This is an idea. We have it on our list. I cannot guarantee whether we can make it for the next release.
Okay.
So,
sorry. Okay, no problem. And for the next one was, do you also foresee the possibility of running scripts in this same task? That would be the email sending task.
These are great feature requests. I can only say please use our ideas portal to share these requests. It's always great to see some communication going on there and also seeing people voting to give us some idea about it, what is the most interesting here.
Agreed. Okay, so next question is, will it be possible to configure the web button from the eForms menu to go directly to the dynamic web viewer instead of the classic web client?
Yes, this is covered now. Basically, it remembers where you came from, pretty much. By default, it's using the preferred web client on the backend. But for example, if I go from here to eForms and then the button will change and will redirect back to the dynamic web view. So basically we try to get the context of the request and then redirect to the correct client.
Okay. Next question is about Smart Capture. The question is, can line items, so can using line items be toggled separately by queue? So can you have one queue using line items and the other one not using line items?
Yes.
Great.
Yes, this is part of the queue-specific configuration. Yeah.
Okay. Next one is another question about Teams. I think we're going to take this one and one more. So are there any conditions for licensing on the Microsoft side, or can any company using Teams implement the functionality?
There's no licensing cost involved on Microsoft's side whatsoever. It will be in the end part of the App Store for Microsoft, where you can like download and use it.
Okay, great. So let me just check. Okay, and then this is the last question we're going to take because we do have to move on. Again, a question about Teams is, can we use the Teams connector inside a Power Platform app?
I've also seen the questions. For me, this question went more in a direction, do we need Power Apps to run the Teams connector? And that's a clear no. The Teams bot, our Teams integration really runs, if you have Therefore and Teams, then you can connect these two. You don't need other licenses like Power Automate or something like that.
Okay, great. Thank you. So again, our apologies if we didn't get to your question. We did go through them in the order received, but we have so many things to talk about today. So great. Stefan, Wolfgang, thank you for the fantastic demo and for your help in answering these questions. We're now going to move on to the very exciting customer session. We have 3 stories for you today, one from Ireland, one from the UK, and one from Switzerland. And it's my pleasure to introduce the first story that we have today. This is going to be presented by Barbara Ellen Regan, Information Management Consultant at Brian S. Ryan, who are one of our reseller partners in Ireland. So she's going to tell us more about the solution that her team implemented for the customer. So Barbara Ellen, take it away.
Hi, Conan. Thanks for the introduction. You can hear me okay?
Perfect.
Okay. So thanks for inviting me here today to share our user story with Fusion at the Fusion event. I'm just going to open my screen here and share it with you and make sure you can see it okay. Yeah?
Great.
Are we good today? Okay, great. So yeah, you gave me a good introduction there, so I don't have to go over that again. Just a little bit about the company, Brian S. Ryan. If I can get in here, my screen. Okay, so who we are, Brian S. Ryan is a company based in Ireland. They were established in 1948, so we're around quite a while. It's a managed print and solutions provider, and we have our head office in Dublin, Ireland. But we also have offices in Cork and Galway service. I'm just going to minimize this out of my way, sorry. 1 second. This is in my way here, this little... So we supply and support solutions throughout the Republic of Ireland, and we have 58 staff, so quite a large number of staff. And we have corporate, government and SME clients. So with regards to Brian S. Ryan and Therefore, we've been selling Brian S. Ryan for some time, and we have a few existing customers in both the corporate and the SME sectors. But in the last year and a half, we have a renewed focus on acquiring new Therefore customer clients. And this has been very successful in that we've almost doubled our client base in that time. So we're continuing on this focus, and we're looking forward to acquiring more Therefore customers over the next year and 2. So a little bit about our client, the use case we're going to talk about today. This is a private clinic and they offer blood testing services. They're based in Ireland and they're relatively new, but this service is a service where people can just walk in without a GP referral, and they provide a fast turnaround for blood results. And so people can look after their health in a proactive way without needing to wait for GP appointments and such like. They have a variety of service users, and these would be individual people who just walk into the clinic, private hospitals who may, outsource their blood testing, GPs who might want to have a local blood testing service, government agencies, and they do a good bit of work with fertility clinics because they have a lot of specialized tests, and corporate clients. These will be clients who maybe want to just look after employees' health and provide a service of blood testing if they require it. So this is always expanding, it's always growing. This is what they're doing at the moment, and it really is growing fast. So before Therefore, there was a manual process in place, and it might just help to explain a little bit about how that works, because going forward, that would be useful to understand the presentation. So when a client arrives at the clinic for a sample test, it's called a new event. And that's because a patient can come to the clinic multiple times for multiple tests over, a year or two. So again, the new event is a good way of defining the actual sample and the test. So when they have a new event, there's an event registration form, and that's completed with the client. All the details are captured in that, and the client signs it. It would also include the consent to maybe email doctors if they want that type of correspondence with their doctors or not. And that's important to get at the very beginning. So the event has a unique identifying number, and that's used for a couple of reasons. Obviously, they need to identify that sample and have a unique number for that, so it's not mixed up with any other sample. It's also used for the blood analyzer machine so that it can read this digital data and identify the blood sample when it's printed out again. So to generate this, or to have this unique number, they decided to use pre-printed barcode labels because it was the best option. Also because the analyzer can read barcode labels. So at the time, what they did was they put the barcode label on the sample, on the client registration form, and on the pathology form. So the client details also had to be written. So the unique number for the event wasn't enough. They needed to have a date of birth and a name of the client written on the sample as well to identify the client. Once all those documents were completed, they created a hard copy file if they didn't have one already. And on that, they would have the client's name, the date of birth, and their phone number and address. So this was a way of just making sure the file was clearly belonging to this particular client. And when results were in, they had to create a manual email to the doctor belonging to that client, if the client had consented to do so. And this would be to obviously maybe give results or just whatever correspondence was necessary to the doctor. So there was a couple of challenges with that manual process. Obviously, the first thing you think of is that it was time consuming, and it was, because there was a lot of care taken in how that whole process was managed. But, you have the typical problems of when a client comes in, you've got to go over and find a file. If they don't have a file, create a file. And just retrieving information. If a client calls, going over to a filing cabinet, pulling out files. So this was taking up too much time as they were growing. The manual process, the risk was the big thing here. A small risk in this industry has serious consequences. So you can't afford to mix up somebody's sample with somebody else's documentation. It was really, really challenging to keep everything 100% accurate in a manual world. And traceability, there was no audit trail of anything that ever happened. So in a manual world or in a paper hard copy based world, you just don't have these audit trails unless you want a whole lot of extra documentation to do that. GDPR, that was mentioned this morning during the panel discussion, very interesting. I see a lot of it myself. I think it's becoming such a big issue. Even small businesses are very aware of GDPR. Again, as was mentioned in the discussion, it was the same here. It's a medical situation. So we have sensitive data. So it's not only personal information identifying people, you have sensitive data. So they were very aware of this and aware of the risks of managing that in hard copy files. Efficiency was another challenge. The process just was not fast enough for them to take on all the contracts that they were getting offered. So as they grew, people heard about their services, word of mouth, without even advertising. They started getting requests for contracts from very large bodies. And they knew that this was not going to be manageable with a manual system. Reporting was another thing. Again, you can't get from paper. You can't just run a report on how many tests were taken, the results of tests for whatever particular test it was. And this is important for a new company because they need to know what direction they're going to move in, if they're moving in the right direction, if they need to step back from one area, get into another area. Reporting was critical. So what was really important? What were the main issues that they had when they were looking to move from a manual system. Data integrity, we've touched on it a few times in the points we mentioned. Data integrity was really, really critical. And they knew for data integrity to be accurate, it had to be automated. So they needed the generation of the unique identifiers, they needed automated document capture, and they needed automated Gmail or email generation. Client case management was the basic function. I mean, this is something that they knew they couldn't do without. They wanted a very solid case management solution that was GDPR compliant. They needed assurance around that, and they needed to understand how the solution would be GDPR compliant. Efficiency to speed up the current process. That was what we discussed already, to take on new contracts and just really to save time. And reporting for business strategy. That was a tool they required. Another one we haven't really touched on, when they came to us, they were looking for quality management systems. They were looking for HR management systems. They were looking for client management systems. I'm very happy to know that we can do all that in one solution. So that was a really big thing for them. And it was very important. Because of them being small, they didn't really want to spend out so much money on all these different systems and have them disjointed as well. So why did they choose Brian S. Ryan? Well, first of all, this came in as a website inquiry, and they had noticed our ECM presence. They spotted us they realized that we had document management customers and they liked our case stories. Also, we were well established in the marketplace, and that was quite obvious to them. An important thing that they said after the fact was that we listened. You listened to us, you understood us, where we're coming from, where we're going to. And they said a lot of others didn't actually listen to what we were saying. Maybe they thought we were too small. But that was something I took away from that. I thought that was really useful to feedback. And we worked with them to address their requirements, because they didn't all start where we are now. They started with little things that grew. But in the end, we were able to address all those requirements for them, and then let them talk to existing, therefore, customers that we have, which was really helpful. It's always helpful when someone is willing to have a conversation with a new customer. So why did they choose therefore? Loads of reasons. First of all, the scalability. They were small. They knew they wanted to go big. They had big growth plans, but they wanted a product that could start small with them and expand. So scalability. Future-proofing, this was slightly different in the sense that they really wanted a product that could take them to a different level they were in now and what they were doing. So they didn't know exactly all the things they might need it for, but they wanted to know it could do all these things. So with the workflows and various reporting systems and dashboards and all of that type of thing was very important to them. The online solution was something they felt very comfortable with, because they didn't have to have any infrastructure, but also they knew updates and new versions were constantly happening. So from a future-proofing point of view, they knew that it was a progressive solution and that they could move with the new technology. They had the one system they wanted for all the various processes. So that was another reason that they chose therefore. And it was GDPR compliant. It provided the automation they were looking for. So basically, it ticked all the requirements boxes. The therefore solution, I'll just go through this to it, so I'll just brief over it. Again, this is how the system works now when a client presents to get a blood test. So the registration form is completed, which is again the event, if you remember, when they're having a sample taken and they're looking for results. What we did was we created a case management solution, and this contains all the relevant data in the case header for the patient. It also, from there you can pull a list of a database of doctors that we created in a category, and the doctor's name, you just have to pull it up and it pulls up all his details, email address and so forth. The other thing that's important about the case is that it creates a unique number for the patient automatically. And basically it pulls all the information together. So that's there to use for further down the road in the process. We then created an event category, and this is where all the information from the registration form, the clinical details, historical details, test type, and lots of information goes into the event category. It also generates that unique number. So now you have a client unique number and you have an event unique number, and these are linked together through the case management solution. Once that's done, from the event, therefore creates a barcode. It's generated within therefore, and it has the unique number for both the client and the event, and it has the client's details, so name, date of birth, and all the things they need to put on that sample bottle. So a few of those are printed off and they go onto the registration form, the pathology form, and on the sample bottle. So now we have everything linked together with original unique numbers, and it's all been automated. So then the documents are scanned, and once they're scanned, the documents are automatically captured into the event using the unique numbers, using the barcode. So there's no entry of any documents. It's all, the document capture is all automated. So that's that part of the solution. Secondly, what we did was we created an automated email, so automated email generation. I just noted here it's important that client has consented on the registration form, first of all, and we have acknowledged this in our event, so we know if the client has consented to this or not through a checkbox. And also it's signed on the original registration form. So what we did is, once the all the documentation is back, therefore we'll generate an email to the client's doctor. And then the doctor's email address is entered automatically. This means it can't go to the wrong doctor. This happens because it's linked to the case file, and his email address and everything is populated in there. So all the required details are system generated into the body of the email. Again, that's all the clinical details, historical details, what test was taken. That's all pulled into the document for the email, and none of that has to be retyped or rewritten again for that purpose. So the benefits of therefore, these are all the things we've touched on going through this presentation. But just to clarify, this is what they have now. This is the result of having the therefore system implemented in their clinic. So data integrity, they now have that through automated unique number generation, and all the relevant client details captured in the barcode means there's no handwriting on samples, and they don't have to create an email or put in a doctor's address that may cause an error going to the wrong person. And they also have all the data pulled over as well. So data integrity, a lot of that has been automated. Automated document capture. So the documents are all captured into the event category under the correct client through the generated barcodes. So all they do is put it in the scanner. They don't have to worry about where it's going. They know that everything is going to the right place. They also have speeded up the process so much because they have this really efficient system now, and it works really well. So they can take on new clients. They feel in a position now that they feel very confident that they have a really robust system to do this. Traceability, they have the sample ID, the patient ID, documentation, all linked throughout the life cycle of those documents from start to finish. And from a business strategy point of view, they have reports. So now they can plan through the trends that they see through this reporting and what's happening within the business through the system that they have. Very happy that they have now be compliant and they have a secure document management system or records management system, which also we will be applying retention records management to as well. From a GDPR point of view, that's really important as well. So that's the benefits of the implementation. So what's next for therefore? Well, what we're looking to do here as they grow and it becomes viable, they want to have a portal for the doctor and client access. So this automated email generation will be going to the doctor, but with a link and an access to the portal to get results for any client they have. We're looking also at maybe digitizing the e-form, which is the registration form, the event form, And that's something that's further down the road. HR case management, that's something they want pretty immediately. They want to have all their HR files in there because training and everything else, records, is very important in a professional situation like that in a clinic. And quality management solution, standard operating procedures, that's something that is going to happen within the next year. So really there's a lot of things they have planned for Therefore, and a lot of things it Therefore will address for them. And that's the end of my presentation. I really hope that you can see some use case for your own clients and or within your own companies. And I thank you for your time.
Barbara, Ellen, thank you for that really interesting and engaging presentation. And I think that pretty much summarises everything we've spoken about today. So you've covered data governance, the importance of security, the importance of accuracy, audit trail. I think you've covered everything that we've spoken about so far. So that's really, really good. And I appreciate you taking the time to put that presentation together and to show the audience this morning. Next up, I'd like to hand across to Michael Rutherford from a company called McCambridge Duffy UK. Michael is an end user client and he's going to present his use case of Therefore in his organisation. Over to you, Michael.
Thank you very much, Mark, and good morning, everybody. So first off, just wanted to thank Therefore, not only for inviting us to speak today, but also for being such a valuable partner over the past few years. I'd also be remiss if I didn't thank Avigi, who were our delivery partners and were instrumental in everything I'm going to discuss today. So thank you to them. But basically, I want to start off with who McCambridge Duffy are. So we're probably not that well known to most, but basically this is our digital transformation evolution and how Therefore fitted onto that. So basically, we consist of 5 companies across 6 business sectors in 2 jurisdictions. I've put there that we're basically a quasi accounting firm with a legal framework. So I need to expand on that because it might not necessarily mean very much. Some parts of our job are heavily accounting focused, and then the other parts of the job are very legal focused. So all of the clients that we work with, we basically have to have kind of both hats or both areas of responsibility. So predominantly what we do is corporate restructuring, personal insolvency, and so we can have personal clients or corporate clients. So we need a good understanding of the position either the personal client or the corporate client is in at any given time, and then put a legal framework around that. So typically that means creating a financial proposal out of their circumstances and translating that through into a legal contract. Now, as most of you are probably aware, accountancy and the legal world are probably not known particularly for their paperless credentials, their digital ambitions, or indeed maybe pushing the envelope when it comes to innovation. And to be honest, we were absolutely no different in that. Now, because of the type of appointments that we take, we have various stakeholders that have to be kind of kept abreast of what's actually happening with either a company progress, perhaps it's employees of that company, it could be financial institutions that have lent to that company, equity investors. So there's a broad range of stakeholders that we basically have to report to, and that then includes the courts, and other kind of governmental departments and statutory functions. So there's a fair amount of statutory deadlines. There's a fair amount of workflow that has to be actioned on every appointment that we take. And as you'd imagine, that is extremely heavily regulated, both by government departments. Obviously, if you're in attending court in any capacity, you need to have all your documents in order, all your ducks in a row. So to that end, it's extremely administratively heavy for our staff. And basically, what I'll come to is the impact that administrative burden was having on our progress and on our abilities to scale. So just another bit of background: we're headquartered in Northern Ireland. I'm not quite sure headquartered actually means anything anymore. Again, I'll come on to why in a moment. We have 140 staff at the moment across the 5 different companies and operating in the sectors. And to give you an idea of the scale, in any given year, we'll be contacted or we'll give advice to around 30,000 either individuals or companies. So each one of those has to be kind of fully audited. We have to make sure that we have done everything correctly across each one of those. So anytime we speak to somebody, we have to make sure that we're documenting exactly the position as it was when it came in, the advice that we give from there, and what the plan is moving forward. So as I said, it's heavy regulated sectors, but to give you an idea of the scale, that's kind of the scale that we look at per annum. And as I said, historically, extremely paper intensive. And I have some documentary evidence to show exactly just how documentary or paper intensive we were. So just a bit more in relation to the sectors. I won't dwell on this too much because I've covered it there previously, but these are the sectors that we operate in. So predominantly the biggest line of the business would be insolvency and debt management. We're in the top 5 in the UK on that basis. We have a significant exposure in the Republic of Ireland, a significant client base there, and both of those are growing substantially. But as I said, there's significant legal involvement in all of them. Now, the icons at the bottom or the logos at the bottom I've put in for a very, very good reason. And that's because ICAS, ICAS and the FCA and the ISI, so the Insolvency Service of Ireland, are our regulatory bodies for those business ventures. And as you see then on the corporate restructuring, we're also regulated on that side. And then on the accountancy services, we're also regulated again by Chartered Accountants Ireland. Now, because all of those business sectors are different, although there's an overlap between ICAS and the corporate and the personal insolvency, they're actually completely separate cycles. And likewise with Chartered Accountants Ireland, they do corporate restructuring, but they also do the advisory side or the accountancy side. But again, they're separate business units. So essentially, we spend the vast majority of our time in an inspection situation. So our regulators, so ICAS, the FCA, Insolvency Service, will basically come and want to know exactly how we're operating things, what our processes are, what our workflows are. Did we notify? Did we stick to the statutory deadlines that are outlined? So to give you an idea of the statutory deadlines, if a case comes into us, we may have 14 days to report to creditors, and we have to stick to that 14-day rule. So we have to evidence the fact that within 14 days, we provided a report, and then from 28 days from that 14, we then report it again. And so we have to make sure that all of our documentation is auditable, that we can demonstrate that we achieved all of the statutory deadlines that are outlined by the legislation. So from that point of view, you can only imagine a manual process of ensuring that that's correct is obviously extremely time consuming and extremely risky, because it is very difficult in a manual environment to keep track of all of the reports that we have generated for the scale that we operate on. So I purposely didn't introduce myself at the start because I wanted to focus on the company side first, but my involvement is, so my name's Michael Rutherford and I would be head of business improvement for the McCambridge Suffolk Group. I never actually really outlined that I have a degree in computer science because it almost seems irrelevant, but in this sense, it's in this project and in this role that I have, it's probably one of the most important factors that I have. But in addition to that, I'm also a chartered accountant. So I have a good understanding in relation to the IT requirements and also a good understanding on the business side and the financial side and a good understanding of what the actual business processes are. So like I said, the challenges that we faced, because of the administrative burden, our headcount and managing our cost our growth was always kind of directly linked to headcount. The only way we could grow was to add more people. There was absolutely no way that we could take on additional clients without adding to the headcount. It was just physically impossible because of the statutory deadlines. What would have happened is that other areas of the business would have slid, so the compliance would have slid, or we would have missed statutory deadlines, which just would have impacted other areas of the business. So we got it to a certain scale, and we couldn't really get past that. So another main challenge, as I said, were the improvement of the productivity. The administrative burdens were just leaving less time. And the frustrating aspect of that was it wasn't actually adding any value to the business, in the sense that some very highly experienced staff and very, frankly, very, very high charge out rates were left to do very routine tasks like sending routine update emails, preparing reports that were fairly standard. So again, it was just a very big restriction on our growth. And like I said, that then impacted the scalability, and we had growth plans, we knew how to do it, we knew how to execute it. But like we said, we always had a reluctance to keep adding the headcount, because we knew that if certain circumstances changed, trying to scale that back down was maybe not as easy. So we always grew organically, and it was never a situation where we just decided to go for it and just to hell with the consequences and just proceed. So we wanted to do it organically, controlled, and in a very organized manner. And then, as I said, one of the imperatives with everything was to ensure that everything was auditable, that our inspection cycles were all as perfect as they had been previously. And like I said, there couldn't be a trade-off between what we wanted to do in terms of growth plans and how that would then impact our regulatory cycles, and basically our service to our clients was our most important factor. So once you lose your regulatory credentials, I mean, the business is done for. So like I said, this is actual documentary evidence of where we were previously. So the very far left, you have an example of a typical client file. To be quite honest, that is, we held usually the appointments for about 5 to 6 years, depending on what it was. That case in particular is about 1 year through. So by the end of the appointment, by the end of the 5 years, it's not out of the realms of possibility that there were 5, 6, 7 LibreArch files for each client. And whenever you think that we had an active client base at that time of about, I can't remember the exact figure, but it was something in the region of 4,000, you're accumulating a lot of documentation there. The middle image is a small snapshot of our previous client storage area. This is the active, the ones that were being worked on kind of on that particular day. So apart from anything else, there was a significant challenge of actually moving the files from one location to the other where they actually needed to be, because obviously they needed secure storage from fire risk, and so there was a significant cost to basically keeping what was vital, confidential information safe, both from as I said, a fire risk, but also a GDPR aspect, or a data protection side. And it also meant that an office was the only way to work. So without the file, our staff were basically hampered by with progress. They couldn't actually do any client work without the actual physical file. So it meant any flexible working and any remote working was very difficult to facilitate. And the last image on the right, I almost get embarrassed to actually say that this is the way that it was conducted, but essentially this was the way that it was conducted, and I'm sure there are other firms like this, but In terms of the authorization procedure, so for a partner, let's say, to authorize that a report is correct and good to be released to the various stakeholders that it had to go to, it was essentially put in a particular location for that particular partner, and they would come along and they would sign that and make sure that everything was correct on it or send it for corrections, and then it was issued to the various financial institutions and court department. So in terms of an actual workflow, it's incredibly fraught with risk, incredibly time consuming, incredibly inefficient, and things went missing. Where is such and such a file was a common phrase. And so, from a risk perspective, we knew that we had to change. But what I would say is at the very senior level and the partner level, there was huge reluctance to it because, as I said, the regulatory cycles are such that it's so intensive. There was a very, very deep concern that we wouldn't maintain that level of compliance. So it did take a bit of time. There were challenges along the way, and I'll touch on a few. But I think it's important to note, because I throughout the project and when the project team was assembled, I think I heard this phrase probably every day during the implementation period. And it just comes to the perspective, and the reason why I wanted to highlight it is that once you push past this, the therefore solution that we now have in place has moved us so far forward that it's unbelievable. However, the resistance to change was such that it got very, very intense. It was very, very difficult to push through, but we knew we had to push through it. So, but we've always done it like that was a common response to any of the processes that we tried to change. And I quite frankly think it's one of the most dangerous phrases in a business, because if you don't evolve and you don't change, then you'll just be left behind, and the business will not survive. And it's just constantly looking for improvement, and areas to improve efficiency is just so important, particularly in the world we live in today. So it's a common thing that comes up when you try to enforce change, but like I said, we pushed through, we got to the other side, and I'm glad to say that actually the results have been very good, which I'll come to in a moment. The actual solution was end to end. So we started at the very, very beginning. So as soon as one piece of documentation came into our office, right the way through to the end of the closure of the appointment and the actual storage of the file. It was an absolutely huge undertaking, but with the support of therefore DocuSign, Apogee, as I mentioned, and Turnkey, who are our ERP providers, we, as I said, now have a solution that has moved us so far forward and given us such a competitive edge that it has been a hugely rewarding process. Just to give you an idea of some of the areas, I couldn't actually go through the full solution because we have several hundred workflows at this point, doing various different tasks, but essentially it started with the written of the incoming documentation. So we, like any other business, I'm sure in any accounting and legal world, routing a document to the appropriate person when you have 140 staff is extremely difficult, because it tends to boomerang around several different staff. And eventually the correct person may get their eyes on it at some point, but it may be a few hours, maybe a few days, maybe even a few weeks later than it should. So it was centralized, and everything that was coming into the business was scanned and then routed automatically. So therefore has a direct link to our ERP system, and the ERP system was able to identify at what stage and what member of staff was assigned to that case. So it automatically routed to there. The additions of that were that, it was an automated written process, but it also ensured that we could say to our regulators, look, this document arrived on this date, it arrived with a member of staff on this date, they reviewed it on this date, and they approved the action, if there was any, on this date. So in terms of an audit trail for our inspections, it was absolutely a game changer, because it really enabled us to give an exact timeline of when certain actions were taken. Then as well, on the authorization procedures, everything that we do basically goes through a chain of command. So you have a member of staff would maybe prepare it. You might have a manager check, a senior manager check, and then eventually you'll have a partner, who they're called insolvency practitioners in our business. They have the ultimate sign-off. The reason why there's such an authorization procedure on everything that we do is because the insolvency practitioners or the partners are solely responsible for anything that leaves that office. So we have to demonstrate that they have had eyes on every report that they see. And so from that, the workflow written and being able to demonstrate that the insolvency practitioner signed it off on this particular date, and then it was distributed to stakeholders thereafter. Again, it's a game changer in terms of the administrative side of how we used to do that. Another huge change for us was that we regularly had to issue bulk requests to particular cohorts of clients. So we might have had 1,000 clients with one particular issue, and we would have to issue them a notice and say, you need to perform X function and you need to give us the information back to do that. Now, previously the way that was done was just an ad hoc request, and it would tend to generally have to be, the information that went out in the request had to be tailored, so it meant that it had to be one by one. So one member of staff would have to sit and work through a log of about 1,000, say, requests, and you can only imagine the level of time that had taken. Now we have as I said, a direct link to our ERP system. We can put that into there for it. We can run it through a workflow, and it will issue exactly what we need to our clients, and they can respond back to us when they're ready. So again, huge administrative task, reduced now to maybe in setup time you're talking minutes, and so it really, what would have taken weeks and weeks is now taking literally minutes. In addition to that, we have real-time update of our ERP system. So as human nature is, and particularly when you're under pressure, it can be very, very difficult to make sure that you've updated all aspects of the ERP system to exactly what you've done. So, you know, I've got a report, I prepared it, I had it signed off, I performed this action, then I sent it to the creditors, then I did this. That time-consuming aspect was also extremely error-prone. So if somebody called them in the middle of that, they may forget to upload it entirely. They may forget to update the system as to where that is, and that again caused huge difficulties when we came to actually identify where a case was, what action had been taken, and ultimately what should happen next for that case. So now when our documents are approved for sending, it automatically updates our ERP system. It automatically adds a note to say that it was sent. It automatically moves it to the next stage in the process. So there's a huge amount of integration as our documents move through the process that ultimately updates the ERP system. And essentially in the business that we operate in, the documentation moves the case. The documentation, the information, the proposals, everything that we do, that is the case, and essentially that moves the workflow around our business. So again, it just is a huge amount of time. It might be seconds here and there in terms of actual time savings, but it's when you add that up across 30,000 clients, 140 staff across 6 businesses, that's where it really begins to scale. So the project timeline, won't dwell on it very, very much, but it is relevant to the next slide. So the project team was assembled. So I led that team from May 18. We went through each of the business units and mapped the processes that they do. Probably one of the most painful processes that we had to do, but hugely rewarding. So it was, what do you do? Why do you do it like that? But again, that was where the response of, that this is the way we've always done this, why are you changing it? So it was an extremely, you may think that this timeline is a bit longer than it maybe should be, but it was a very important part for our business to actually do it, and therefore prompted that to actually look at, why do we do it that way? Should we do it this way? Are there better ways to do this? So all of that fed into the actual workflow design. So eventually in Q4, we managed to get to the workflow design, and that took a few months just to get everything right. A lot of back and forward with the management teams and the various operations teams. And there was a refinement process, obviously, that took quite a lot of time. And then what we had to do in Q2 of 19 was just load all the existing documentation that we have. We purposely took a decision that what we would do is load all of our digital files that we would have. So that consisted of about 1 million documents. So those were all scanned and loaded onto the Therefore system. Had a challenge in itself because you have to actually keep the business operating as as that process is ongoing. So that actually had to be done over a weekend. Again, wouldn't have been possible without the support of Therefore and Apogee to actually do that. And then eventually we were ready to launch in May of 2019, and we cut over on one Monday morning. We deployed champions into each of the various business units, and their responsibility was to isolate, report and resolve any of the issues on the launch day. Again, I can't emphasize how important that was, because the quicker we could resolve it, the easier it was for the staff to get operational. And to be quite honest, with the level of change that was implemented within one day, there were actually very few issues outstanding at the end of about 48 hours. So we had managed to work through all of the issues, and there were very few actually left on the action list once launch was done. So to actually demonstrate then the progress since Therefore, unfortunately I'm a chartered accountant and I'm also IT nerd, so graphs and visuals are my thing. But I think it demonstrates very well exactly how our firm has been able to grow since we actually launched Therefore. So as you'll see, 2018 we were about, I think that was 6,000 across all the business units. It's now approaching 15,000. I think by the end of 2022 or early Q1 2023, we'll be up at the 15,000 mark. So it would have, it increased our capacity. Now, it's not solely responsible for that, but what it meant is that we could actually commence our business development activities. We knew we could win work, but we knew if we won the work, we just couldn't deliver the work. So, it was business development. We're then told, okay, look, we have the capacity now. Things are working much more efficiently. Go and win additional business. That's what they've done, and that's what this has translated through. So if you look at the commencement date of when we actually started, we began to kind of gradually phase in some of the workflows across the business, and that it wasn't a strict cutover date in that sense. Some functionality was used throughout 2018, but the actual full crossover date of everything was towards the dates that I outlined. And as you can see, 2020, 2021 and 2022 have been extremely successful for us. Now, we did have the small matter of the worldwide pandemic in between there. And what I maybe didn't dwell on very much is how vital a role Therefore played in that. If you can imagine trying to move 140 staff out of the office over an entire weekend, who are incredibly reliant on client files to process their work, and where the workflow was moved around by files moving from one location to the other, it just would not have been possible. So had the pandemic happened prior to Therefore, we would have had to either bring staff back in much sooner than we actually did. But what it actually meant in the pandemic is when it happened, again, we finished on a Friday and said we'll be out for 4 or 5 weeks, and then we'll all come back into the office. We're now still not back into the office, and there's no actual reason why we will ever go back to the office full time, because we can work as effectively as a team out of the office as we can inside. And again, that is testament to the undertakings that or to the benefits that Therefore has provided for the group. And to be honest, if you factor in staff morale, staff retention, there's a huge, there are a host of additional benefits that has brought in. We would probably have lost quite a significant number of staff, had we forced them back. But we're also able to now say, okay, if you want hybrid, that's fine. If you want fully remote, that's fine. If you want to work full-time in the office, that's fine as well. So it's given us that flexibility that we can do, we can offer all of that to our staff. One thing I'll touch on in a bit more detail on the next slide is the reduction in cycle times. So it has given us a competitive edge, and it's basically enabled the business development teams to go out and actually win business, because we can say, look, we can do this, we can do it well. Your clients will be well looked after, and all of the advice will be perfect, because our staff are now more enabled to spend more time on the advice and advisory side, rather than doing very manual tasks that actually aren't adding any value to the client or their stakeholders. As I said, then, an improved customer journey. Kind of touched on it there with the business development side. Our clients and stakeholders are now kept much more up to date in a much more timely fashion and with better quality information. Because of the link between our ERP system, and therefore we can now tailor our reports much more easily and send them much more frequently than what we previously had. So if a particular stakeholder said, look, I would like monthly reporting on how that asset sale's going, no problem, that's fine. We just create a report, we schedule it, and it's sent as a matter of course. Doesn't have to worry about the staff, and the stakeholder involved gets the information that they want, and as real time as they or whatever frequency that they want. As I touched on quite a bit, it has improved the compliance and the audit cycles that we are more or less perpetually in. And as I said, it's the human error side of that, and it's no fault of our staff. It's human nature. If you are trying to multitask across a whole range of different clients, and you're trying to handle phone calls and emails that are coming in, and you're the busier you are, I suppose the more significant risk comes in of human error and updating them correctly. And it can be quite substantial errors. Are very, very easy to make. You forget a zero and it's 100,000 as opposed to 1 million. It makes a huge difference to the report. So that reliance on the human and making sure that everything is integrated with the ERP is invaluable. As well as that, it enables our senior management team to more accurately identify gaps and bottlenecks that are in the process. So previously, again, quite embarrassingly, the only way to tell that there was a backlog in a particular area was to actually look in a particular location that those reports sat and look at it and go, okay, there's 100 files sitting there. Somebody needs to actually do that. But if you weren't in the office that particular day or the manager was off, that might not have occurred. So this gives visibility across the whole company of where particular things are happening, where it's getting backlogged, where we need to allocate more resources. And so it is a very valuable tool for the management team to actually highlight, okay, look, there's a problem in this particular area. We're going to add additional staff to solve it, and then we'll clear it down. So again, that level of visibility across the whole business is useful for the management team. And then the reassurance that provides the partners and the actual company board is, again, it's just invaluable, because they know exactly where things are at. They know if there's a fire starting in a particular department as regards client work, and they can address it much more quickly than what they had previously. And you don't have this issue of a member of staff absolutely drowning in work and saying, I'm fine, I don't need any assistance. But in actual fact, their work is so far behind, and you only find that out maybe weeks or months down the line, and it's very, very hard to unwind at that stage. Point 5, I've touched on previously. Basically, we moved 140 staff out over one weekend, and they are still largely working fully remote, and I don't see that changing at any time in the near future. So in terms of growth, the graph that I showed you previously, that's a 2.5 times growth over a 4-year period. And what's most interesting about that is that that is with the existing staff count as was. We have not added any additional staff whatsoever. So the productivity and efficiencies across the businesses have basically driven that growth, and it is not, you know, the previous challenge that we had, that the only way to grow was to add more staff, is no longer an issue. Now, there are other challenges that it brings, so we do have other bottlenecks that therefore can't solve, and that's kind of what I'll come to as well, is that our progress will probably never end. It's a digital transformation journey. It's unfortunately not got an endpoint. We'll be in it forever, I would imagine. But just on the actual efficiencies that therefore has more or less directly contributed to, it's a 75% or 70% reduction in the cycle times of one of our key metrics. So it's for one of the biggest core businesses that we have, and one of the highest volume appointments that we take. And basically what was taking us 38 and a half days, which is quite conservative, it is actually in reality much higher than that, has now averaged out at about 11 days. So again, because I'm an IT nerd and a chartered accountant, a graph, a picture tells 1,000 words, but the numbers tell the story. This is the actual metric that I'm talking about. So if you look at the graph towards the early part of 2018, it was at 40, 30 to 40. Now, I do have the graph that goes back previously, and I can assure you that it bounces around 30, 40, 50 quite consistently. But if you see, as we begin to apply the various phases of the implementation, that progressively starts to decline. And now, the reason why it dips so low to about 7 days is that they were clearing a backlog, and it meant that they got extremely fast at it. And then it's plateaued, and now it's leveled out at around 11 days. Obviously, there's different complexities dependent on the circumstances of each individual case, but on average, our cycle times are down 70%. So the future for us basically is just kind of continuing that digital transformation process. So from some of the factors that we're looking at, or some of the new implementations that we'll look at, are the mailbox monitoring to try and drive efficiencies there, a Kofax PDF product, the robotic process automation, document imaging, and automated processing. The last three are probably bundled together, and it's something that we're looking at quite intensively. But that's basically what the future looks like for us. Listen, thank you very much. I hope that gave you a flavour of our transformation journey. By no means are we finished, but and I don't think we ever will be, but it's a good insight nonetheless. But thank you.
Great story. Thank you so much, Michael, for your participation. We can see the level of detail, obviously, and the investment that McCambridge Duffy has within Therefore. It's really very significant. And of course, I want to say on behalf of Therefore, thank you for your trust in Therefore to run your mission critical operations. We just see how important that is, and we're thankful that you chose us and Apogee as your partners.
Thank you very much.
Hello and good day. My name is Kai Blanke. I am the CIO of the Cellular Group, and I will show you today the use of Therefore in our company. Who is Cellular? We are a family-owned business, as you might guess, which is a construction business. We were founded about 110 years ago in St. Gallen in Switzerland. Currently, we are owned and led by the fourth generation of the Cellular family. Our headquarters is located in St. Gallen. We have 7 regional offices and also hold stakes in several construction-related companies. Altogether, our group has more than 600 employees, of which 60% have access to company IT. You can see examples of our business. We are focused on road construction and civil engineering, also do railroad infrastructure. We are primarily engaged in road construction. Our smallest construction sites are about 1 week and cost less than 10,000 francs. For example, private forecourt. The biggest ones are, for instance, right now, a piece of highway which is about 10 kilometers long and involves the refurbishing of several bridges and tunnels at a budget of 30 million francs. Everybody knows from kindergarten how construction workers work, but now let's have a deeper look in how Cedera is working. Of course, although machines are getting more and more important and take over hard work, a lot of work is still executed by hand. Almost all of our people have an on-site background of construction, and a few are IT nerds. Here you see on one slide our whole process, more or less. On the top right-hand side, there is an icon called BIM, Building Information Modeling. This is the way construction is done in the modern world, by filling a digital twin and then deriving the work to be done from the digital twin. Architects and engineers are working with CAD nowadays, not producing paper plans, but three-dimensional models. Our first contact is a digital call for tender containing proposals of up to several hundred pages, not paper, but PDFs. So already in the contracting phase, we face lots of documents that are involved. During the project preparation phase, we have digital plans, proposals, and contracts with subcontractors and vendors. So in the end, for a usual construction site that we have, we end up with about 50 to 60 documents before we start the construction. During the construction phase, paper is also on the retreat. There is a need for documentation, especially when things come out different from what has been planned. Therefore, we have digital construction diaries, pictures, protocols, and reworked and noted plans. In the end, there is a detailed invoice documenting all the work, not only the amount, but also the whole construction diaries, all the invoices from our vendors, and everything, of course, digital if possible. Digital steering on the machines is also on the rise, resulting in even more data that needs to be cared for. The problem is, in archiving, printed data cannot hold all the information, so we need a digital archive for all this in case of questions, and of course, if later on guarantee requests come up. Let's have a look at our software side. It started all about 15, 20 years with files, and then we introduced SAP about 10 years ago for all the financial aspects of the process. In the SAP, we hold calculations, offers, orders, and contracts, reporting of all activities and all our invoices. All the paper and archiving were still filed manually. With the rise of PDFs, we started to use a SharePoint. So we ended up with two places. One is SharePoint and one were still the original files. As you know, digital documents are more and more important for our side. So we need to find a solution instead of storing and archiving on paper. And therefore, we decided to introduce, therefore, as our digital archive. So let's have a look at how we benefit from therefore. There are several things where therefore excels. It is easily usable also by non-trained users. The out-of-the-box integration capabilities of therefore include SharePoint and SAP, our two main platforms. We have standard interfaces and also web service API that we use extensively. As we have a very small IT, almost all our systems are outsourced. Our systems should not produce more work, but reduce the amount of work, not only on the user side, but also on the IT side. So we are very happy that with therefore online, we have a document management system which is running as an SaaS. Therefore, it's very easy to configure and therefore also easy to adapt to new needs. We use the workflow engine, which is based on documents to support our processes and document our processes. And last but not least, we have a simple licensing and pricing setup, which is making all the financial things very easy. Altogether, we came to the conclusion that therefore clearly had the best price and performance ratio. We started with our implementation 2 years ago with the non-visible part by transferring all our SAP documents into Therefore. They're stored in Therefore, but accessed through SAP. The interface used is a standard interface by SAP, the SAP archive links, which comes with Therefore out of the box. After we were getting more and more confident with capabilities of Therefore, we introduced Therefore also as an archive for the construction files, which we cleaned up from the more and more splattered SharePoint. Over the years, we had about 10,000 different construction sites in SharePoint, and nobody was able to find anything anymore. So we concluded that we need to move all the closed sites to Therefore and left only the open site in SharePoint. Why did we do this? Therefore is a very capable system, but when it comes up to sharing with third party, the Therefore is not as open as SharePoint is. Now, after more than half of our users were working with Therefore already, in case of the construction file archive, we started to roll out Therefore this year also for the HR department. We have 7 regional offices and our HR is centralized, so our digital employee files were the next logical thing to keep in Therefore instead of paper files. Coming with the digital employee file, we also implemented the first workflows, an employee onboarding and offboarding workflow, and also internal material orders, for instance, for marketing or IT material. We won't stop there. Plan for the next month is a successor to the network shares for finance and office files. And also, we are going to introduce an employee app open for all the employees of Celery, not only those which have currently an IT access, but really everybody. And we are going to set up workflows that are based on Therefore, but accessible from the employee app. And these will include, for instance, applications for leave, like expenses or the order of company branded workwear. So how does our integration work and how did we get successful with that? Let's have a look. I have this very short video showing you how we implemented the integration of Therefore. It was very important for us to keep the documents in sync with the SAP picture of the project that we have here. On the left-hand side, you see our project cockpit. The project cockpit is where all our project leaders are working with. They look for a project by entering the number of their project, as you can see here. They open up the project, which they find. In our case, this one is an already archived project. And now, instead of looking for a file, they just press the button and Therefore is coming up here on the second screen they all have. And so they have a very easy interface way to access all the files. Instead of looking for paper somewhere in the cellar, they just open all the files they need to have access to with a click. Also, the same holds true for the employee file. We have the employee data all in SAP, as you can see here. And if you press then here the dossier button, all the files that are kept in Therefore are coming up on the other screen. So everybody can access all the data from all the places. What were the success factors in our project? As you've seen, automatic file management is a very important one. What do we mean with that? Once we start a life cycle of a project or an employee, the creation and closing of the files and the setting of the status should happen automatically, triggered by the leading system. Our users do not have to do anything in the therefore, but drop and access files. They do not need to find files, but they can call up the files directly from the system where our leading data is located, which is in our case, the SAP. And the focus on the training was more on the process improvement than on the technical things itself. So it was not how do I search something, but it was rather how do I find an invoice faster? Or if you're out on the construction side and you only have your iPad with you, how can you access the latest plans and the latest information you need? By focusing on these process improvements, we were able to engage our users a lot better than by just focusing on the technical solutions. Last but not least, using analogies for non-IT users is also a very important part. The language is the key. No user will understand the need for it. We just access this file storage, but most would accept that we need a new archive room if the old archive is already full. No one will accept when clicking on a button that they need like 30 seconds to get a search result. But if you tell them that going down to the cellar, finding the right files and come back takes you less than 30 seconds, this is an acceptable answer. So far, I'd like to say thank you and hope you took some very good input and will use therefore as successful as we did.
Before we finish today, there was one point I wanted to address. Stefan, I noticed a number of people asked how in Barbara Ellen's story there was the application of, or therefore creating a barcode. And some people were wondering how that was done, or some people believe it can't be done, but I believe it can. Can you tell us more?
Yes, it can be done. And I think the best way for doing this is using the workflow task for creating documents or adding files to a document. And in the online help, you find details how this can be done. There's a tutorial called QR codes in Word documents, and this gives you details how this workflow task can be used to create 1D barcodes and 2D barcodes. Both is possible. Thanks.
Great. Okay, thanks, Stefan. I appreciate that. Okay, well, we did use up the full 120 minutes, but that's because there's so many things to talk about. But in any case, we are reaching we did reach the end of our time today. So in that case, I would like to ask my colleagues from the sales team to join us. Maybe you have a few words for our guests. Michael, would you be able to start us off?
Thank you, Connor, and thank you all for attending. Great energy today. I think we heard exciting customer stories, ideas how to improve in the future, high number of attendees and exciting technology. So our key message for 2023 and beyond is we are here for you.
Thank you, Michael. Philip?
Yeah, I want to thank the attendees, of course, but I want to also mention what I like very much today is that we go in the direction of integration, and for me integration is key. I have this information calling back from customers, Canon partners very often, and we see the Teams integration is cool for also kicking off a workflow task for, let's say, people who are not very often directly into their phone. I like this very much because it's shown the ease of use of our software in the future.
Great, thanks. Mark?
Yeah, I think I'd like to thank Barbara Ellen and Michael Rutherford for great presentations that really resonate with me personally as far as the topics of today's event, and for all of the attendees who have taken the time out of their day to join us.
Absolutely. Charlene?
Yeah, thank you. I echo what was said by my colleagues. Thank you very much to all the ambassadors. It's very good. We can really see the positive attitude when we go and visit you in person, but see that there's so many of you are joining today. it's great also. So I hope that you got some interesting and insightful information from this morning's sessions.
Well, thank you for joining us at Fusion 2022. We hope you learned a lot, and we hope to see you again for our next event. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.